So we're going to do a double act, so I'm going to be talking for a bit and then Rory's going to come down and give you a demonstration. So between the two of us, we'll do this presentation. That link at the bottom is a DOI, so this presentation, slides and the videos that we'll show is up online on Figshare, so you can grab yourself a copy. I'll put that URL up again at the end. The presentation is about combining an institutional repository, which is ePrints in our case, with a data archiving solution, which is archival data archiving in this case, to support the retention and access to large research data sets. So I'll do a bit of introduction, background, drivers, requirements, approach, and the workflows we support, and that's just a warm-up act for Rory, who will do the sort of the demonstration through a series of screen caps and actually show you the system working, and then we'll talk about what's coming next. So I'm Matthew, I'm from Archivum. We provide data archiving and digital preservation services to a broad range of organisations, and that includes about 30 universities in the UK who use our data archiving services for research data. ULCC provide a wide range of services to higher education, and a lot of customers in the UK, and that includes hosting ePrints. So what we've done is we've combined data archiving from Archivum with ePrints as a hosted repository solution for institutions from ULCC, and created a joined-up solution. And there are a lot of drivers that are causing institutions, universities in the UK to retain and make accessible their research data. That includes funding body mandates, researchers who want to do the right thing with their data and share it and make it accessible and reusable. And there are a series of benefits to institutions in having an infrastructure in place that supports the retention and access to research data. And a lot of institutions start by considering how they might extend their existing institutional repository. So certainly in the UK, lots of institutions have a repository for their publications, and they consider extending that to support research data. And that's kind of a natural place to start. They've got researchers who are already familiar with using these repositories. They have policies and procedures in place. And sometimes it may be the only option, but there may be nowhere else for those researchers to deposit data. So the sort of workflow that the institution might start with involves researchers who, through their browser, take some files, deposit them into ePrints, which stores them on an ePrint server, and add metadata to create a record. That might be reviewed and approved by an editor or some sort of administrator. It's published and made accessible, and you'll get a DOI. Okay, so that's a typical sort of workflow, but that causes problems because a lot of institutional repository software, things like ePrints, isn't really designed for handling large data sets. So getting lots of files or big files into the system, especially over the web. And even if you do get it in there, these repositories are typically running on relatively small scale infrastructure, and you can blow that out of the water with a single data set without any problems. These systems often have limited capability for long-term data management and archiving, and they're not great for accessing big data sets either. They're great for accessing publications, but not necessarily all data that underpins those publications. So the first thing we did is we looked how to combine ePrints as a repository with our archiving service. So the workflow looks a bit like this. Researcher takes files, uploads them to ePrints, where they're stored, metadata again to create the record, review, approve, DOI. But now, rather than leaving the data on the ePrint server, the data can be taken from local ePrint storage, put into Archivum service, and Archivum restores multiple copies of the data at multiple locations in data centers and guarantee data integrity and all sorts of other stuff. And we do that through an appliance that accesses our cloud service. So ePrints can hand those files over to the appliance with checksums to ensure chain of custody, and then we'll replicate them into our service. And when we know that they're safe, we can then report back to ePrints So ePrints can remove its copy, and ePrints can report back to the user that the files are saved. So we've kind of got files going one way, confirmation of the save coming back the other way, and that can manage some of the storage issues around big data sets. So that's a good thing from a researcher point of view and an organisational point of view. Everything goes in and out of their repository. It's sort of a one-stop shop. It lowers the cost of storage. It stops things from filling up and falling over. The data that needs to be retained is kept safe and secure in a dedicated archiving solution. But that model still doesn't really work that well for big data sets. And it doesn't really work very well for distributed deployment either. And by that I mean when an institution has researchers who are actively doing research and generating data, and they want to protect and keep that data safe as they go along. So an institution may have an archive, and they're storing data in that archive as they go along. And then at some point later, they may want to create a record for making that data visible and accessible to the outside world. So the researcher then creates a record or an entry in ePrints, which in this case, from ULCC, may be hosted in a different location. So that someone else can then come along and they can discover the data, request access to the data, but when they come to retrieve the data, they actually get it pulled back from its source through the institution. So what we want to do really is separate out the metadata and the record from the data and the archiving and link the two things together. So the approach we're taking now is to the metadata record in ePrints, the data stored in the archive service, still to control and coordinate it all through ePrints, but allow data to go directly to and from the archive rather than having to go through the institutional repository itself. And that allows the whole thing to scale much better, and it supports a wider range of deployment models. So the workflow this time is a bit like this. So the researcher has files with their browser. They create a record in ePrints. And ePrints then requests that a location is created for that data associated with the record to be stored. So what we have now is we use a thing called OwnCloud, which is a way of building Dropbox-like services on top of storage. And we put that on top of our archive service, so it's easy to get files in and out. And what ePrints is doing is it's saying to OwnCloud, create a folder for the researcher to drop their files into. So the files don't go through ePrints anymore, they go directly into the archive, into the appliance, and then eventually into the service through OwnCloud. And they're cached. And the researcher can continue depositing files as they go through their research project. And then at some point, they can go back to ePrints and say, hey look, the data's ready, I want some of that to be made accessible and discoverable. Again, there might be a review approve process. But now the person who's reviewing it may check the data files themselves by going directly to the archive. Approve it. ePrints can then say, well, those files, because it's now part of the record, have to be fully protected, so they get put into the archive and service for long-term storage, and they make it usable. Files are safe, and that's reported back to ePrints and back to the user, so they know that the data has been properly retained. And again, you can have a DOI at different times in the process where you might create this. And that's got a lot of benefits. Because better supports the research lifecycle, being able to create data and archive and store them as you go along through a project, and then link that into ePrints record at a later date. But still have ePrints as the point of control, but who can access that data and then download it at a later date. So that was a sort of an overview of the approach we've taken and how we've got to where we are. Rory is going to come down and show you what it looks like, take you through some screen cameras.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, so Matthew has done a wonderful job explaining the concepts behind this and that. Hopefully what I'm going to show now is an implementation of the last diagram we saw. So the first thing, so I split it into 4 parts, where the first thing we'll do is uploading of data, file share account, and so this is a situation where, get this going. Okay. So it's a situation where a logged on user, it's a completely normal main ePrints. It hasn't even been modified for metadata at the moment, but that's fine. So the first thing that just happened there was that was ePrint saying, okay, create me a folder in Archivum. So that's been done. It's also looked up the username that the ePrint user is logged in as, found that they have an own cloud account, and that allows them then to straight away create a share, which is a way of accessing the folder that ePrint has just created on the device. What that means is, whenever that user logs into OwnCloud and goes to their OwnCloud folder, they'll have, so what they said was the ePrint ID was number 23. So now they have a folder called 23 sitting in their OwnCloud folder on their machine. They can grab some files, stick them in there. Lovely. And when they return back to the repository, so it's coming in folder number 23, and you go back to item number 23. There you go. They will just appear. No, okay. So I'm quickly pause this because this will keep going faster than I go. There we go. Okay, just quickly, what I was pointing out to myself when I made this here. Is we have towards the left we have some technical metadata that's come from the archival service. So the size of the file. The ePrint doesn't know that because it's not done anywhere near ePrint. The replication state, which, as Matthew was saying, is something that gets reported back through and is very important. Obviously, it's just arrived, so everything's red at the moment. But the time that it was accessed, which is something that archiving is the thing that knows now, not ePrint, but it needs to know that, and that's especially in the UK, a very important piece of information for managing stuff. According to various mandates from funders, because you have to keep stuff, in some cases, 10 years since last access, you need to know what's after being last access, that's reported. Towards the left, we have some ePrint metadata. So what's happened under the hood is that ePrint says, I might start this off again. ePrint has created an empty document object for each of the files. And that's allowed, that just gives you the normal sort of range of ePrint document level metadata, just expose some of the sort of ones that are a priority for people at the moment, like license. So I just changed that Ruby file there to a software license. You can also use the ePrint's security method, that's just using sort of document permission system that comes with ePrint, makes a record against it. Of that against the document, and then it can be embargoed. So we can play around with it. So that's all gone into ePrint. But it can use that data now to manage access and other bits and bobs. I was able to, because this is so completely different to the traditional ePrint interface for documents, I was able to play about with it and add a little bit of sort of, you can do things to more files at once. You can store, so you can traditionally store stuff that way. This is really important. You remember this one? Oh no. I was worried about that happening. Here we go. I was around now. Get it going again. Keeps files in its own directory structure. That's not keeping any files now. They're all in archiving, so archiving is mine keeping for folders and subfolders, and that's actually been fed back to us from various institutions. That's actually an important thing because people structure their data files in a way that they expect to see again when they get them back. So, going to setting the embargo, we've seen this already. It's good to look at it twice. So, the archival data pool that I'm using has been set up with the ingest held flag. And that means it will go up to a certain point and stop. So at the moment, the files, even though they're in archiving, they are not mutable yet. And you can, let us catch up with where I was. You can release them for the full archiving process once you provide a checksum. So we'll cover this a bit more in the next steps, I think, but at the moment you can pop in a checksum for a file, hit ingest, and it will start that process. Once that happens, you'll lose the ability to delete stuff. I think at this point, I've my holiday snaps in there, we don't want that in there. Get out. Go on. Right. Don't want that. And that's actually removed it from archival, which if anyone has an archival thing, will know that's quite cool. You can't do that thing. As easy as that anyway. Okay, so got our files, we carry on, we make our deposit, stick it in there. There's a preview of what the abstract looks like, it's pretty similar. We'll make that live. I think that brings you on to yeah, pretty much. Okay. So now, if you imagine that was the researcher in an institution, putting up the bulk of their data for their project, but they had a collaborator in a faraway country who is not an institution, but they have some incredibly important field of data that they need to manipulate. What we can do is we can use a lot of the OwnCloud features to help with the sharing of this process. So, if we scroll down a bit, we can see, scroll, that as well as creating a share for the user that's logged in here, we can also create a public share that's password protected. This is usually stuff you get with OwnCloud. There's a public share there. The link would be great to have a little button here to email it to someone, but at the moment, as a cut and paste, you send it off to your collaborator in a far off place. They then, and the password of course, they then pop into the browser, stick the password in, and now they have access to, via OwnCloud directly, this is the web bit, to your folder full of data. Okay? They're not allowed to delete it, so I was showing you there, but they can download it, have a look at it, and they can upload stuff. So there's their data. They don't need an OwnCloud account for this, they don't need an e-key for this. But so the person who sends them that link with the password, it's up to them to sort of look after their security of stuff, really. Right, and that's appeared. So that was easy enough. So now we've got our full set of data. It's already been published. We will download the data. So, and again, this uses the same process where it's going. Okay. Same process, it doesn't have the data, so it can't remove it. It can manage the access to that data. It does this by chatting to OwnCloud and archival, in this case mostly OwnCloud. And in the same way you can create a public share for uploading user downloading. So here's the apparatus. It's just showing you that it shows you the same sort of icon. You can't edit them now, and all the ingesting here stuff's been tidied away because now it's all about downloading. You can so this is a public user not logged in. They're going to try and download everything. See, they actually have access to a couple of those files. So first thing is that gets filtered out of that little list that they're asking for. If you really wanted to, you could probably hack that. However, when it creates a share, ePrints does that, and ePrints says, okay, well, I know what the access rights are, and I am going to create you a special folder with links to the file that you're allowed to see. Then I can give that to you. That's what we see now. There's only 3 files. That you've only had access to those 3 files. And then you can select them all and download them as a zip. Again, just using native own cloud features and other cloud file share things are out there. Maybe internet at some stage, who knows. So there we go. Data's appeared there in the zip file. And that was the data that person was allowed to see. So next, we're going to download data with a file share account. And a little trick here. So this is a situation where we have a user with an ePrints account. It could be an institutional user. It doesn't have to be, but that's often the case with data repositories. Now they're looking to integrate with institutional authentication. So there we go, another user, it wasn't our downloading user. They're going to try and download stuff. They don't have an own cloud account at the moment. So, sorry we didn't find your own cloud account, so you've got 2 choices here. You can make a public share link, like anyone else can. You'll notice it's, or you can create an own cloud account, which is a nice little shortcut. And then you're back to where you are here, where you can create a share, and that will actually be shared directly with you. So hit the button. A few bits going on here. So you have access to an extra file, then it's registered users, and this is the registered user. They still don't get the names and addresses because that's how you start. Okay, so that gave you a little link there, which you could use to go straight to the OwnCloud web client, but that would be boring. So they're going to connect the desktop client to another account. They've already done that, and they've remembered that strange string of things, and there's data sitting on their computer waiting for them. I'm aware of the irony of dealing with 1 kilobyte and 86 kilobyte files in a big data talk. So I feel like a bit of a charlatan, but you can imagine enormous files and lots of them. That process might take a bit longer, but it's managed by the web dev syncing stuff that OwnCloud does. So it's an improvement on the sort of click download that you usually get with repository like ePrints. So I think that is it. There we go. Cool. That next step.
Yeah, John. Right, so next steps. Going to make this available to the community, so the ePrints plugin is open source, and the sort of modifications, additions we've made to OwnCloud, so we can talk to ePrints, we'll open source that as well. Plenty of scalability and performance tests still to do. Sort of prove that the integration works. We know OwnCloud is pretty scalable. CERN use it, for example, in a thing called Smashbox for HC data. We know in Germany there are about 20 universities who use it with 500,000 users potentially. So we know that scales, we know our archival service scales, but we want to test that this integration now scales to properly big data sets. Pilots with some people that we work with, yeah, which would be great. Rory users, yeah. People we showed this to so far are pretty enthusiastic about what it would enable them to do. We want to get proper user testing and feedback. And there are some things still to do in terms of extending the functionality, making it much simpler to deal with the checksum, so automatically generating checksums on the desktop with the original files and getting those up into OpenCloud and to archive. So we've got a complete chain of custody, and we know the data's really being delivered properly. In deep archive, there's some latency involved in getting data back, so we want to manage that experience for the user. So when they want to download things, they might be told, hey, look, it's in archive. It's going to take a little bit of a while to restore it, so it's immediately accessible. We'll mail you when you're ready. And there's some work to do in terms of review approved type workflows to do with access. So someone wants to access the data, that might have to go through an approval process. And we've done these sort of things before, but we just need to roll that back into this current version of the integration.
I was about to say that as far as I'm aware, anyone saw the ACL work there and John leads, I've done this, had a chat with them, and there's doesn't look like there's any reason why that can't be rolled into this, so then you have a more regular way of using imprints for access as well.
Yeah, that's a good thing about it. It's the thing that controls access and then tells OpenCloud what to expose. You don't have to have all the system supporting the same access control lists, mechanisms. It's all coordinated by imprints. Questions? There's the DOI again. It's a targeted version.